Lucky you.
36 best
Tune
holes in
into
golf.
Alternate Shots podcast,
Barney's Army.
where we talk about golf,
Sandy.
poker,
James Bond.
horse racing,
Double.
classic movies.
Zenyatta.
We have no script.
Down the stretch they
And
come.
we are glad you joined us.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Billy, wow, next week is the Masters, and I'm getting excited. I know that you have a few stories. What are your remembrances from Augusta National, from the Masters? In my opinion, the greatest sporting event ever. Do you disagree or do you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. There's nothing like, it doesn't matter who, you're sitting down with family on a Sunday for the Masters, or everybody's watching it that likes golf, and it's such a magnificent visually place that, I'm jealous of anybody that gets to play there. And that came home and hit me square in the forehead when I went in 1995. I was lucky enough to go, and I walked in, was like, this place is awesome. But within minutes, I was depressed because it came as like just an absolute sudden realization. I can't even hit a ball on the range here. I can just watch. And it was great to watch. And in fact, that year was Tiger Woods's debut as an amateur at the Masters, and we were on one of the par threes on the front nine, and it was the practice round. So I was at the practice round of the first day. It might have been day one.
That would be either the fourth hole or the sixth hole. The fourth hole is a very long shot. The sixth hole is kind of a shot where you're up high and you.
No, this was the fourth hole.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a freelance cameraman with the big camera on his shoulder directly behind the pin and green. And I was standing right next to him. And Tiger Woods hit a shot. He knocked it on the green. And then as he walked to the green, he was twirling his club like a baton. And the guy with the camera put the camera down. I literally said to this guy, there's gold walking at you right now. There's this little kid who just hit the green, flipping this, He was like, I was only interested in the shot. I was like, okay,
Well,
but I'll never forget the picture.
Your cameraman instinct. You would have taken that picture until he stopped doing that.
Absolutely. That was the good part of it. This was a kid. It was like, yeah.
What's the guy in the front at the University of Michigan band? What do they call that person?
Yeah. The
baton
the
leader.
maestro. Yeah. But that was the year Ben Crenshaw won. And I was down there on business. One of the firms that I was associated with took a bunch of people down, and they rented a house, and we had a big barbecue. So there was probably 25 of us in this house the night before at a party. Maybe 8 or 12 of us stayed there. But at this party, we're all telling jokes and everybody's laughing like crazy. And somebody gets the bright idea. Everybody throw $20 in a pot. And the first person that runs into someone they know at the Masters wins the whole thing. Tom, the guy who brought us down there, accuses me of coming up with that idea, which is not that far from the truth, because I knew a lot of guys who were going. So we all get in there. There's like 25 of us. Where do you want to go? We walk past the driving range, and within 4 minutes, hey, Billy, how you doing? Guy I knew from Bronxville. I was like, that's about $2,000 in the hat pool.
That was in 1995.
95. Yeah. We went and played golf somewhere else while we were down there. It was a great trip. But I remember Crenshaw winning, and I thought that was really cool.
So you went to the practice round. I went 5 years later on business. And the way we did it is we would have 3 client events. Each were 2 days. And so we would have and we had houses. I told people, I said, you get free tickets to the Masters. You're about 10% of the way there, right? You know this because you've been there. Okay, you got tickets. That's great. You're in New York, you got tickets. What are you going to do about travel? Tough to travel. Okay. I think one of the best things to do is fly to Atlanta, get the car, drive 2 hours, spend the day there, and then you leave. Because now you don't need to have a hotel, which is impossible. Food. You think you're just going to walk into any one of those restaurants? You're going to wait 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So we went. We had this planning organization rent. I don't know how many it was. Let's say it was 21 houses So they were all 4-bedroom colonials, 10 minutes from Augusta. Those people left and they went to Disney World for the week, and they all had tickets. They all had 4 tickets. We'd have breakfast for them, and at breakfast we'd give them $20. They'd say, "What's that for?" Well, we're going to take a van over. That's another problem you don't have to worry about. The van's going to take us over like a stretch limo, drop us right by the front door, and we go in 8 o'clock. That's when they open up, not before 8, not 7:55.
Right.
No running. Don't, just because you got in at 8, no running. Anyway, so what's the $20 for? Oh, it's lunch. All right, Tuesday, Wednesday group. Yeah, it's lunch for both days. What? Yeah.
$20.
Pimento sandwich is $1.50. Chicken sandwich is $2. Everybody said, "Oh, that's great." And they had money left over after the 2 days were there because it didn't cost that much for lunch. But that pro shop that was like 6 football fields long in every direction.
All the tents, yeah.
The big pro shop.
Yeah.
The one client I went with, he's from England. He said, "Bob, first thing we got to do is go in the pro shop." I said, "Why?" He says, "Sometimes," and this is Tuesday, Wednesday, the first group, he said, "sometimes they run out of stuff." Okay, so we went in there and we bought everything, and they make it easy. They let you take your shopping bags and put them in a little spot, and you get a ticket so you don't have to walk around with it. But that was my first experience. And I said to people, "Look, I went first class. The company I work for had a house for us. In the morning, they had someone came in the morning and cooked everybody breakfast. So no worries about breakfast.
Yeah, same thing with me.
Take us over to the place. We had $20 for lunch. And then the extra house that we had was catering. What do you need catering for? Well, after Tuesday night, we hosted a customer dinner and drinks and stuff like that. So they didn't have to go all over Augusta finding a Jolly Rancher restaurant for $1.99 steak.
Right, they set up there.
Yeah, we'd have it there. And then we'd had Mark Calcavecchia talk to them about it, or, some of these guys, Duffy Waldorf, the fun guys that were there. So that was my experience. And I got to be there the whole week. So I was there to greet the customers, the first event, which was Tuesday, Wednesday. Second event would be the first 2 days of the tournament, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday. And it was unbelievable. And I didn't really appreciate Augusta until I got to go 2 years later. The same exact thing. And I said, this time I'm going to walk every inch of that property. And I did.
Yeah, I walked all of it too.
And I realized one thing. There's not a flat plate, even the table.
No flat, no.
Even the tables, there's not a flat spot there.
And I remember seeing a booth set up that paid $5 per weed that you brought in, and there was no one at the booth, because there's no weeds.
Did you ever talk to any of the people that were marshals there or any of the volunteers?
I don't remember any discussions. I was with a whole lot of people, but I was by myself a lot of the day. I remember seeing Tom Watson. I made eye contact with Tom Watson on the 6th hole on the par 3. He was thinking it over, and I was standing, right there. This was the first round, so he was thinking, and he looked in my direction. I made direct eye contact with him. I swear to God, we were looking at each other for
he was looking through
10 seconds, and I'm rooting for him.
He was looking at the top of your head to see which way the wind was blowing.
Yeah, but he knocked it stiff, and I was like, I did that.
I met a woman that had the hat on because they wore kind of construction hard hats. They thought of everything there. They just everything. And if they hadn't thought of it that year, the next year they would implement.
Right, they do it right.
I said, "Well, I can't get a napkin." "Oh, sir, there's no white napkins at Augusta National on the golf course." I said, "Why not?" He said, "It doesn't look good on TV."
There you go.
So
But think of some of the moments you've seen on TV. The one that always sticks in my mind was Matt Kuchar's hole-in-one on 16. He was so everyone was happy. Obviously, that's an amazing thing about golf. It doesn't matter if it's your worst enemy. You see a hole-in-one, everybody has the same reaction. Your caddy, his caddy, the other guy, everybody thinks it's great. And Kuchar and the crowd behind him, and Kuchar turned around, and one of the guys behind him was cheering, and he took the fan's hat off and threw it.
Yeah,
I thought that was really good. That's just like such an open, honest, hey, no holds barred reaction, which has to be a memory that he'll always have. A hole-in-one at Augusta, a hole-in-one at Augusta, a hole-in-one at Augusta during the Masters. I mean, think of that.
I saw him play the fourth hole, the hole you referred to earlier, the long par three. And I guess he was a little tight. Maybe it was the first time he played the golf course, the first time he played the fourth hole, and he cold shanked it. If you remember, to the right is like nothing over there, and he just
Right.
cold shanked it up against whatever was over there. I'm like, ooh, it wasn't a practice round, but I also so back to the volunteer. I talked to this woman. She wasn't a very tall woman, but she was very cheery. And I said, "Oh, do you like volunteering here?" She said, "Oh yeah, I've been a volunteer here for 28 years. This is my 28th year." She
Wow.
said these, and she was just to the right, about 100 yards short of the 13th hole, the par five, that not very long par five.
Right.
Somebody laid up, she would be right there somewhere within 10 or 20 yards off to the right. But you could also see people coming down 14 where she was. She says, very few volunteer spots turn over. You know, it's like a
waiters
waiter at Peter Luger's.
at Luger's, yeah.
Waiter at Peter Luger's isn't turning over
Yeah,
unless
it's like it's selling his seat on the stock exchange.
Yeah. What other memories do you have?
I remember Sandy Lyle. I was at a party with a bunch of people, and I don't remember the years, but there were two years back to back where I watched Sunday with my parents down at Sea Island. And as much as I loved watching the Masters, I also wanted to be out playing. So we were kind of mixing things up, and the Masters was always on. It's just such a peaceful thing to have in your house going on. Even if you don't sit there glued to the TV, it's just a great backdrop. And the mood that it creates. I remember one year I took my two sons to play golf on Sunday, and we were recording the Masters. So I was avoiding all contact with it. And we come off 18, and my son Neil sees it Simonoi through the window at the grill. Oh, so and so's in first place. I was like, so that was funny. It was worth taking the guys out to play, but the delayed taping was, spoiler alert. I forget who was leading at the time, but it's so Easter-like, and it transcends golf. It literally transcends golf because it's such an experience that so many people who aren't anywhere near it are thrilled by. Different than a Super Bowl, which is a slap bang dang ding. This is a 4-day culmination of it's golf heaven for fans, and I guarantee it for players alike.
Well, I don't know.
It's got to be as esteemed as it is, because that course is such a great design by Alistair McKenzie and Bobby Jones, and so thoughtful. For decades, if you asked anybody where's their first, their wish list, they say Augusta. Augusta had no rough. There was no US Open conditions afflicted on it. It was, you might have bad angles, bad lines or trees, but you're not going to have a bad lie pretty much anywhere on that golf course. And that, I think, was the McKenzie's design.
Well, you're right, but it does have,
intention.
if you want to compare Augusta National to Winged Foot, which is a stretch, where it would compare is when you're out of position on a green, or you're out of position and you miss the green. So, for
Right.
example,
Short siding, yeah, absolutely.
missed it right of the bunker on 10 West at Winged Foot, and the pin is anywhere from the middle down to the front, you're very much out of position. You almost have to play up top to the fat of the green, because you might have trouble out of the rough holding that. What's
And
it?
and it's so thin, you'll be playing knockout.
Be in the bunker.
Yeah.
So you basically got to concede and go to plan B and try to make a nice 2-putt for a bogey. Whereas the same thing, I don't know, you can, oh gosh, there's, well, let's say that third hole, right? That little drivable par 4, if they want to. If you're in the wrong position above that hole, holy cow.
Well, the risk rewards in McKenzie design, his book, The Spirit of St. Andrew, he explains a lot of, he believed that everybody should be able to play every golf hole. It should be an interesting test for whatever caliber you are. So he would argue against long carries. He says the low handicap doesn't see him, and the high handicap, it ruins his day. So there's, in fact, there was one example where he went back to a course that they had talked to him about earlier. Now he had become a famous designer. They brought him back to look at it, and he gets to a hole and he says, I don't recall that bunker way out there, way out there. And they said, well, we put that there to punish the man who hits it far right. And Mackenzie said, if he hits it that far right, you should be sorry for him.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. It's like he was different from, say, C.B. Macdonald, who had a penal, or Pete Dye. They have a penal approach, which is legitimate, and a lot of people love it. The bunkers you can't get out of, so don't go in them, and that kind of stuff. But Mackenzie said, you should never have a lost ball, never, if it's avoidable. And the only time a long carry is worth it, like at Cypress, is when the reward is so enthralling that if it costs you a ball or two in your lifetime, it's worth it. But even then, you should provide a way around that carry for the people who can't carry it.
It's kind of
So
hard.
he had a great understanding of golf, and not just making the shots, but the mental aspect that went into it, the health, the freedom of swing, all of that was in. He was a doctor who retired because the patients that he told to go out and get fresh air, played golf, never came back. So he thought he could do more for people's health by designing golf courses.
Well, that's the thing about Augusta is you don't really, I'm just thinking the out of bounds is really not a factor. And that's another similarity to Winged Foot. But if you think of the average golfer, say an 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 handicapper playing Augusta, you can see them playing all the holes up until about 9. Now, if you can't hit a big enough shot, you're going to be up high to that small green. You're not hitting a 9 or a wedge like most of those play, or a sand wedge. You're going to be hitting a hybrid. That's a scary target. A 10, same thing. You're going to be up high, hitting 2 up high again, a long club. An 11, I think, is different. I think 11, a good, a mid-sized handicapper is going to play that as a par 5. You're going to play 2 down to the right. If you're lucky, you've got that easy chip shot, and hopefully you don't skull it into the lake and make an 8. But then the other hole that's terrifying for us would be 15, because you can't get home in 2. And you then have to lay up. And even the pros say it's the toughest third shot.
It's a tough layup, yeah.
So most of those holes, with the exception of those 3 or 4, are holes that people can make pars or bogeys on. And that,
Well, that's true. That's true with Winged Foot too. The difference is literally, aside from the design and the history of the different styles, as far as the way the golf course plays, Winged Foot has rough. Augusta now has rough, but it never did before. That's just 2 different things. All courses, some courses have, the ones in Ireland have heather. That there's different ways of approaching that.
The
rough
at Augusta, though, will make the player think he can do something that he can't, because it's
you're never going to see this kind of U.S. Open rough in Augusta.
It's going to be just enough that froggy rough.
Yeah, it's like first cut.
The ball, and it's going to take the spin off of it. And you try to hit a shot out of that rough into 9. You either get something that rolls a lot, or you might get a flyer. And being over 9 is,
then you're gonna. That's like being over 11 at Shinnecock.
It's the hardest hole at Augusta.
I mean, 10 at Shinnecock. I've never played Augusta, so I wouldn't know.
On TV, what do you think is the hardest hole for a more, an amateur? Somebody who shoots 75 to 90.
12 seems to give them all nightmares, I imagined.
Shortest hole in the course, right?
Yeah. I mean, look at what happened to Jordan Spieth there. He was about to be Superman, and then it was like, bang, one hole goodbye, Jordan. That still got to hurt him, even though he's Jordan Spieth, and it seems like that all rolls off him like water off a duck, which is fun to watch. That's why he's fun to watch.
Didn't Tony Finau have a chance and he put it in the water? A lot of these
I think so. A lot of the guys do. I know they all go to that tee if they're in contention, thinking, "Don't hit this in the water." What was it? Was that the hole that Couples came up short?
Yeah, Couples' ball did not go in the water, and
Didn't
that helped
go in
them
and-
win.
Yeah, and it helped
That
them
was
win.
the miracle. That was the miracle. Jim Nance talks about that.
And that I remember that moment too, because that's an example of how relaxed Freddie Couples came across. He hits that wedge, basically lets go with one hand, And basically, as the ball's landing on the green, he turns around and starts fishing the ball out of the water behind him.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, what is he think he maybe in case I knock one in the water on 13, I'll have it spare. That was just so
12
good to watch.
12 at Augusta is like, if you see somebody on TV and they look thin, like if you think of Dan Hicks, we know Dan Hicks, we see him at Winged Foot. He's super thin when you see him in the flesh.
Right.
TV makes you look a little bigger. And I think it does that to
Yeah,
12.
they say it adds 10 pounds.
But when we would go play, if you and I teed it up on 12 at Augusta right now, we'd say, holy cow, there's just a bathtub with over that bunker.
Yeah.
And you'd say, there's no green there. There's nothing to hit.
There's nothing to hit.
It's worse than
because it's a visual thing.
13 East, right?
Pardon?
13 East.
Yeah, same idea with no pond.
Right. Well, the pond or the or the beach. You
or
got
the beach.
Bunker down there. If you're not a good bunker player, you'd be all there all day.
Yeah, but there's so much history there. I remember 1986 sticks in my mind watching Nicklaus and Watson. People, because Nicklaus won, people forgot how close in contention Watson was throughout that whole thing.
Yes.
They were going bang, bang with each other. I thought that was great to watch. I loved it that Nicklaus won. He was my mother's favorite player, and that made her day, obviously. But it was great for the game.
Peterson didn't caddy for him. The caddy at the Masters caddy, we won all his other majors there with. It was his son caddying for him that year.
Yeah, Jackie. Was it Jackie?
Jackie, yep.
Yeah.
But they had to catch up to Nicklaus. Nicklaus kind of snuck in. I think he birdied maybe 9 and 10. I don't know all the birdies he had, but he kind of came up that leaderboard all up quick. And somebody said in that tower, maybe it was Tricani, hey, you better start talking about Nicklaus. He's going to win.
Because he was like 4 or 5 under, I think, right?
Yeah. But that's
I don't remember the details. I watched a synopsis of it maybe 2 months ago, and as I mentioned to Matt Venturi when we spoke, it was so great to hear Ken Venturi's voice again, calling that. That was such a staple. The whole thing is almost more a tradition for the non-golfer than it is for the golfer.
And maybe that's the beauty of Jim Nance. Maybe Jim Nance is the straight man for the wonderful voice that Venturi had. Jim Nance has got a great voice.
Yep.
He kind of set up Venturi by the pauses or the question to open.
Yeah, no question, a marriage that worked.
And I think a lot has to be said. I mean, Longhurst was my first recollection of an Englishman, right? And then Ben Wright and others.
Ben Wright, yeah.
And that was there for a reason. It was a different type of voice, please.
Right.
Ear. And Peter Oosterhout, all these people are part of what I call the CBS chorus. They have a chorus. NBC has a chorus too. They do it very
good. Dan Hicks and Nick Faldo were much the same as Nance and Venturi on their own way.
And
Johnny Miller,
and the whole crew working at both of these networks have really understood that it's much like going to a Broadway musical. It's not just the golf, like we learned from Tricani. Tricani would tell Venturi, the TV's there. You don't have to talk about the obvious, right? And gee whiz, one thing I'd like to ask a commentator is, did you have 4 or 5 things to say on every situation and you had to pick the best one?
Right.
You were never, ever short on what you could say in a particular spot. Like, what's his name? In your life, Vern Lundquist, right?
Yep.
And just great.
And some of them, you can tell the ones that are kind of rehearsed or staged a little bit comments, but the legitimate excitement, better than most. I mean, how can you beat that? That's what we're doing at home. Holy God, that might go in, And you see those shots at Augusta, and you're rooting for those shots at Augusta. Everybody's rooting for them. And again, I'll say it, the fans probably like the Masters more than the players. I
think so.
It's candy for
players like they go to an event and they have a bit more freedom. They go to the Honda Classic here, or they go to you know, in Texas, the Valero Open. They're the big folks on campus, right?
Yep.
And they basically can do what they want to. That's a totally different story when they go to Augusta. There's some things to abide by there.
Well, plus in the viewers, it's like The Godfather. You might not intend to watch The Godfather, but if you come across it on TV, it's very difficult not to watch it. You come across a golf tournament on Saturday, you might watch, you might not. If it's the Masters, you're going to stop and watch. It's hard. It doesn't matter who's hitting it. That course just invites visual stimulation. I would love to play there someday. Anybody out there?
Yeah, me too. That's the only course I'm getting up and taking my golf bag on the road for right now. I don't have any other courses that I would go to. That is one of them. I've been fortunate to play a lot of these other ones, and like you. But
Yeah, a friend of mine told me years ago, he goes, "You ever play Augusta?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, I got invited once, but I had to work that day." I said, "You didn't quit your job? Seriously? You got, one day."
yeah, it'll happen.
And if not, so what? I've been privileged enough to play Winged Foot a couple thousand times, so I wouldn't trade those for a trip to Augusta.
One thing I'll tell you is that when I went and came back and people knew I went there, they said, "Who'd you watch? Who'd you follow around? What player did you get to see?" All these kinds of questions. I said to them, "You don't understand. I live in Westchester County back then, 20 years ago. I said, we have the Westchester Classic. I can go see anybody I want to and be this close to them. And there aren't, I said, I went there for one reason. I went there to see every inch of that golf course.
Me too.
I went
And
to see
I walked it the same way. Yeah.
I wanted to see the Dogwoods. I wanted to see those things that weren't showed to you on TV. Pretty much you see everything. They did such a great job of depicting that property. I wanted to go up close and see as much as I could about Rays Creek. I wanted to see the elevations, and I probably did 10 rounds of golf on that and 2 different trips there because I made myself go around. And it's very easy, unlike a lot of other places, to be a spectator. They really make it easy. And even when you come in the morning and you come in with a chair, what do? You throw it over there in the 16th hole, and it's there when you come back 6 hours later. Nobody's messed with it. You could leave $1,000 on your chair, and there might be $1,200 when you get there.
Yeah, it's a little like at the racetrack when you put your racing form on the seat.
Yeah, it's understood.
Nobody takes that, so you don't know what's going to come back and be object. So,
well, it's different grass. They do get a lot of help. Other greenskeepers, superintendents from other places come in, and I think that's a treat too. Oh,
and the azaleas, the color.
I'm there for 2 weeks doing the second hole, because again, it's a course. The coordination.
It's a work of art that they preserve with the hands of artists. It really is. It's just, I have to say, Winged Foot, the condition and everything is great all the time, and it's a wonderful venue to play golf, but they don't have to deal as much with, freezing the azaleas so they bloom at the right time and stuff like that. So these people are into what Augusta looks like. And that's why it looks like it does.
Well, I think Augusta is a forerunner too of top golf courses and what they should do. The sub-air. I don't know anybody that had sub-air prior to learning about that. They did that. Well, they have money to do that. Not everybody has money to do that, but that makes that Mona Lisa that they have there the Mona Lisa for since what, 1934?
Yeah, exactly.
Gosh, they had two or 3 years during the war. They didn't play it. Claude Harmon played in that event so many times and won it, but he finished very well a number of times and against very heavy competition. And here's a guy, what did he do? He went down to Seminole, wintertime, sort of time, this time of year, he'd get his car packed up with his 4 children or 6 children, how many he had at the time, right? And they would go north.
Yep.
And they would pull up at Augusta, and Dad's going to go play golf this week.
Well, he probably did well at Augusta. I'm sure the greens at Winged Foot helped.
Yes. Yes.
You know, a lot of pros, you need imagination and creativity, but more so on greens at some places than others. In Augusta, you have to be able to turn your back on the hole. It's a work of art that they preserve with the hands of artists. It really is. It's just.
Thanks for joining us
Casper,
today.
Billy
We
Harmon,
really appreciate your
Double
feedback.
Indemnity,
And please
Arky,
subscribe to the
Two
show
Outer,
and hit the
Claude
bell
Harmon,
icon so you get notified
Movie
of
Classics,
new episodes.
Mark Gable,
Hit them
Odd
hard
Job,
and hit them often.
Best 36 Holes.